Okay, welcome everybody. We'll get started if that's okay. Welcome to Cheshire and Wirral Partnership NHS Trust webinar to talk through our mental health support team trainees for our educational mental health practitioners. So the webinar will take about 45 minutes and will tell you everything you need to know to apply for these posts that we have out. Next slide, please. Little bit of housekeeping. As I said, we will keep to time, so our talk is around 45 minutes and then we will have time for questions at the end. If you could please use the Q&A function, should be at the top of your screen, to put in any questions that you have, and then we'll answer those at the end. If you wouldn't mind keeping your microphones on mute for the duration of the session. So we plan to give you lots of information and then we'll open it up for questions and answers at the end, if that's okay. Should there be any further questions that we run out of time for, myself and Jane Henry will email you or get in touch directly to answer any specific questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to do some introductions in a little bit so that you know who we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about who Cheshire and Wirral Partnership Trust is, so you have a bit of an idea of the organisation that you will be applying to work with. Then we're going to talk more specifically about what the mental health support teams in schools do. So the teams that you will be joining and the service that you will be working with. And then we have a little bit more about what the role of an educational mental health practitioner does. And we've got Jazz, who's one of our team, who will be talking through a typical week that she has. We will then have a section from Caroline, who will be talking around the academic side of the course, to be able to tell you a little bit more about what's expected from that side of it. And then we will then go on to tell you more about how to apply and what's expected from the recruitment process. There are a number of key dates that you'll need to hit to be able to apply for these posts. And then we'll finish with questions and answers at the end, if that's okay. So can I move now to who's who and introductions, please? So can I introduce myself? My name is Sophie Holt. I'm one of the clinical leads with the Cheshire mental health support teams in schools. I tend to work over the west side of the patch, and I'll hand over to Jane Henry now for more explanation about the east side.
Hello everyone, I'm Jane. I work with Sophie as a clinical lead for MHSTs. I tend to look after the East patch, so both East and West MHST teams have similar boundaries to our local authorities, so we very much are building our partnerships kind of across those two distinct patches.
Thanks,
Shall
Jane.
I hand on to Dan?
Dan and Jill, please. Yep.
Yeah, no worries. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Arrowsmith and I am a clinical coordinator for one of our MHSTs in Cheshire East. So my job is essentially to manage the team. So there are two clinical coordinators in the East, myself and my colleague Pete, who isn't on the call today, and we have the equivalent over in the West, and I will hand over to Jill to introduce herself.
Thank you. My name's Jill Wasley. As Dan says, I'm one of the clinical coordinators in the west of Cheshire, and I work alongside other clinical coordinators in our area to look after the mental health support teams.
Can I introduce Jasmine next, please?
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine. I am an education mental health practitioner in the west side of Cheshire, but I'm primarily based in Ellesmere Port at the minute.
Lovely, thanks, Jazz. And last but not least, Caroline, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, afternoon everyone. I'm Caroline Brown. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm the programme lead for the EMHP training course over at the Psychological Therapist Training Centre.
Brilliant, thank you. Next slide, please. So CWP, as we all call it, was founded in 2002 and got foundation status in 2007. It's a large organisation covering a big geographic patch and employs over 5,000 employees. We have a number of care groups. The posts that we have advertised are in our children and families care group, and in that care group we have lots of other services, so our learning disability CAMS, our 0 to 18 young people's mental health service, our single point of access, our eating disorders, and these other services will be your partners with the mental health support team. Again, we work with a number of partners and local authorities, and we serve a population of over 1 million people. Next slide, please. Our core values that we hold dear are care, courage, compassion, communication, commitment, and competence. You can see that they're all very much aligned and interconnected, but distinct in their own right as well. And I guess the reason why we're saying this is we do operate on values-based interviewing systems. So understanding this and being able to think about your answers in terms of those 6 C's would be really important when you come to the interview. Next slide, please. Now, this is a brief map of where we cover geographically, and we wanted to show it just to give a flavour of what CWP covers, but to say what these posts won't be covering. So the posts that we have advertised are just for Cheshire West and Chester and just Cheshire East. So they're not posts in Wirral, Liverpool, Bolton, Warrington or Telford or Halton, please. The other reason for maybe flagging this up is to, I guess, get your heads around how these posts need to be geographically agile. You will be required to travel from school to school and around a geographic post when you're doing your training and once you're qualified and working with us after the course is finished. So you heard Jasmine talk about earlier that she's mainly based in the Ellesmere Port team. So whilst we do allocate people to a specific geographic area, there are times where you will be required to travel all over the place, really. You might be required to attain training in one of our CWP buildings, or it might be that you're providing a group with, say, sticking with the Ellesmere Port example, the Chester team. And again, for an East example, you might be based in Crewe, but again, delivering something with colleagues in Congleton for a set of school staff. So really just to flag up that we do cover a large patch and that the posts do need to be agile. So the next couple of slides that we've actually got 2 short videos to show you. These videos were made in conjunction with young people that have worked with our services. So they're videos of young people talking about their experience of working with us and talking about what qualities they have really held dear in the staff and practitioners that they've come across. So again, hopefully it'll give you an idea of the qualities that we're looking for when it comes to your application and your interview. So that's the first video, and then the second video is again really flagging up the difference that you can make through applying for these jobs and working with young people. So Sophie, can I ask you to run the videos now, please?
If you were to go into a job here, it's important to appreciate the fact that you will be saving people's lives.
You're going to be the person who can impact that person's life the most at their worst times.
Come to work and keep a positive attitude and help people.
What works for one person might not work for someone else, and just cater for different needs.
A really important factor is someone who's a good listener.
Because if someone doesn't feel listened to, then they're not going to be able to open up and get the help that they deserve.
They definitely need to be quite a friendly, warm person, non-judgmental, and almost telling me that it's okay to feel the way I feel.
It's always good to have a laugh. There always needs to be room for jokes.
And just to have more of a human connection, that makes it so much more enjoyable.
You gotta be as you as possible. Yeah, they just need to be themselves.
Just a genuine care, being in the job because they want to make a difference.
When I first came here, I'd never properly been listened to before.
Didn't leave the house, very anxious, just stayed in bed really.
I was so low and I didn't want to get better.
Because it can seem like all hope is lost and nothing's going to make this better in a million years, but they had that unwavering belief, and I think if I hadn't have picked up on that, I wouldn't have got better.
They've helped me to understand how I am as a person.
I wouldn't be where I am or who I am without them.
There is a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not terrified constantly, and that's definitely due to getting the right help.
I'm grateful for them because whatever life that I have because of them.
Every single one of them has influenced me to keep going.
They were ones that got me to where I am now, to save my life, and that is what they did.
Thank you.
When I first came here.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Jane now, if that's okay.
Thanks, Sophie. So hopefully you've all finished crying now. They were really moving videos. But yeah, I think they really show kind of the difference these kind of roles can make. It was important to share that. So what role are we recruiting to? So it's postgraduate training for a year, and that will start in September. So year one, you will be employed as a band 4 and will be attending university for, broadly speaking, 2 days a week during the academic year. And then the other 3 days will be actually working in one of the allocated teams, either East or West, in practice. And you will be working with established teams, so you'll get lots of support, lots of kind of interaction with your peers who play a really important role in helping you learn and develop through that training year. Then at the end of the year, all being well, you'll qualify as an EMHP, an education mental health practitioner. So the second year is very much about you'll carry on working with us, but you'll move on to a band 5, so you move up a grade once you've qualified. But it's really about consolidating your learning. So a really, really important year after you've actually finished the academic side of the training. And then after that, there are lots of progression opportunities in terms of you progressing your career within CWP. And after you've done a couple of years as a qualified EMHP, for example, you will have opportunities to look at applying for kind of senior wellbeing roles as well. So there's progression built into this, but lots and lots of support throughout that journey. Okay, next slide.
Thanks, Jane. So can I hand over to Jill and Dan now, please, to talk a little bit more about the mental health support teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is quite an important slide, to be fair, because I know a lot of people on the call are going to be listening to all of these opening slides, but then also thinking, well, what is this job? What is it all about? What are we going to be doing? I would highly recommend, if anyone's got a notepad, to make use of this time to make some notes, because this is what the mental health support team is. And essentially, we have 3 functions. We have one function that is around interventions. We have a function that is around the whole school approach. And then we have a function which is around timely guidance and advice. And how that looks in practice is that an EMHP would have a allocation of a cluster of schools. You wouldn't just work with one school on their own. You'd work with a handful of them. That would be anything between, say, 3 and 5, depending on the makeup of that team. And it will be very much your job as an EMHP to develop those relationships, to develop those strong relationships with the mental health leads in the school, with the SLTs, with the head teachers, within that school community. We're very much around, our view is that we want to be an addition to the school. We don't want to just be a run-of-the-mill service that just gets referred to. We want to be part of that community. So being in the school, and as was previously mentioned before about travelling, this is where this situation comes in, because you might spend a few hours in one school and then move on to another school as well that day. So all of our functions fall into this. And a lot of that is going to be around trying to promote organisational change for mental health and well-being. We have a very strong emphasis on consultation. Now, once you've done the training and there's an incredible amount of learning involved, you're also going to be supported by senior staff who some of them have core professions, whether that be nursing or social work or OTs or all sorts of different professions we have in our service. There's a lot of learning involved for yourself as a practitioner, so you do become somewhat of an expert in terms of what you are saying, and that's where the consultation comes in, because we offer that expertise to our schools to help them understand their pupils and how to make things better for them. Naturally, one of the big focuses of what we do is also our clinical interventions. So that again is part of the course, where you'll be trained to complete those interventions. And I'm going to pass over to Jill now, if that's all right, just to talk in a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So yeah, when you get to university, amongst a whole host of other things, you will be trained to be able to deliver what we call evidence-based brief interventions based on CBT for mild to moderate mental health needs. And so you will be able to deliver interventions on a one-to-one basis, but also some interventions on a group basis as well, for things like low mood and depression, for things like anxiety, and for things like simple phobias, as well as some work around behaviour. So those typically are the areas that the training that I'm sure Caroline will tell you a bit more about will be on. And so these are what we call manualised interventions. So you're pretty much trained to deliver something in a step-by-step fashion over a number of weeks. And our interventions tend to be around 6 to 8 weeks in duration. And in terms of the whole school approach, there is a model out there that, if you look for it, you will be able to see that covers what we mean by the whole school approach and all of the different areas of that. So that's things from arranging or thinking about with the school the ethos and environment, how the senior leadership team in the school are promoting mental health and well-being, whether it's about understanding and identifying need, or about targeted support that you might put in place. And we also want to think about how we might be supporting staff as well as the young people and the children that attend the school. And how you might deliver that over the year might be that you might sit down with the senior leaders in that school and think about delivering or carrying out an audit. So finding out what the school does well at the moment, where there might be some gaps and things that they might want to focus on and work on. And from that, you might then pull together a bit of a plan or a strategic plan for them to for you to then support them in delivering throughout that academic year. And so we start off on that basis and then think about what we might be doing over the year in terms of that whole school approach and the different areas of the model. And then I guess when you've completed your training and maybe become a little bit more experienced, then you may work alongside some of the more senior practitioners to carry out those consultations with school that Dan was talking about. And so those are our 3 core functions, really. And as you do your training, you will be, you'll know which areas you're kind of working on towards all of those. Is there anything that I've missed out there, Dan?
No, I think that's very nicely covered, Jill, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Can I come to Jazz now to talk a little bit more detail from personal experience about what it's like to be an EMHP?
Sorry, Sophie, can you change the slide over? Yes, thank you. So I recently qualified as an EMHP back in October, I think it was. So I'm now full-time in service 5 days a week. As the slide says, no 2 days are the same. They can look completely different. Some days you can be in school, some days you can be in the office. It just really depends on what's going on. Our activities do change throughout the year. We do work through school holidays as well. So what we do during them times does look slightly different, but we do have sort of bases where we can still meet with students and parents outside of the school environment. We deliver things in line with the whole school approach, such as assemblies. We run mental health ambassadors with the young people at some of our schools. We do training with staff and also like staff reflective drop-ins, and we do sort of run events such as like coffee morning drop-ins for parents just to find out a bit more about our service. This can either be in the morning or we do attend some parents' evenings as well. As Sophie said, we do travel to various schools. We can be in 2 schools, 3 schools in the one day, so it does sort of require a bit of time management. But normally you are at school for a certain amount of time, just to fit things in. We work with children aged 4 to 18, parents and carers of the younger ones, as well as sometimes we have to link in with them around the older ones, and all school staff as well. We do work with one-to-one, either parents or children, and also group work for both as well. It requires a lot of teamwork, so we work across the team, whether that's Cheshire West and Cheshire East or both together, or also then within the locality. So you might deliver a group with another practitioner, whether that's in your team or across the whole patch. We do a lot of multi-agency working, so especially with school staff, there's lots of different staff in school that you can work with. I work with quite a few, especially in the high school, there's a lot of links in there. And then we do work sometimes linking with social workers, family intervention workers and things like that. As Jill mentioned, from the whole school approach and things like that, the 3 core functions, we do deliver the evidence-based therapy. We do this sort of most of the time it is in person, but we can do it digitally through, we do get trained in some digital interventions, and we do group as well. We do offer this sort of to parents and children online through Teams sometimes as well, depending on their needs. And then also, as Jill mentions, we complete an audit with most or every school at the start of school year to sort of identify their needs. We might focus a bit more on, depending on the level of need in that school at that time, and that's based on 8 different factors across the audit. Yeah, I think that's it from me, sorry.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Jasmine. That's brilliant. We're just going to swap over presentations now, and I'm going to hand over to Caroline to talk more about the academic side. Can I just remind people about the Q&A chat? So if there are any questions that are coming up at the moment, please pop them in the Q&A section and we'll come to them at the end. But now, if that's okay, can I hand over to Caroline Brown to talk about the academic side of the first year, if that's okay.
It's on mute. Okay, thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Sophie? Thanks. So just to start off by saying that we're a recruit train programme. That essentially means that we're an NHS, our programme's an NHS funded initiative that's designed to expand the mental health workforce. So it basically allows services to hire individuals into these paid training posts where their tuition but also their salary will be covered. So essentially that means that there's no cost to the trainees kind of who are coming on our training course. The funding is covered. So we work in really close partnership with our employing services. So typically for a cohort of trainees, the trainees will be located in services all across the Northwest region. So there might be 8 different services who are hosting our trainees in a particular year. Our training programme, it's a postgraduate diploma, and it is 12 months in duration. So we start in September, the teaching runs until July, and the training, the last submissions tend to be in August. So we are a validated programme by the University of Manchester, and we are accredited by the BPS as well. So that means that we've been through some sort of quality assurance around the training that we provide. Our programme started in around 2019. And the cohort that we're recruiting for at the moment will be known as our Wave 15 cohort, who will start in September. We are anticipating a big cohort this September, so potentially around 50 EMHP trainees who'll be training together. Next slide, please, Sophie. In terms of our teaching days, so teaching's going to start on Thursday, the 24th of September. Like somebody said already, most of the teaching happens on Thursdays and Fridays over 3 academic terms. So from September to July, we do break for school holidays in line with the Manchester school holidays. So there are teaching breaks over Christmas, over Easter, and during the half terms as well. We do have a little teaching block in term 1 where trainees are expected to attend teaching on maybe 3 or 4 days per week, and that's just to help us get some of the sort of teaching content over while you're all settling into services and before kind of you are going out there and starting working with children and young people. Over the course of the year, there's about 70 teaching days. Our teaching venues are mostly in North Manchester, so at Prestwich and at Whitefield as well. And they're pretty accessible by the motorway, but also Prestwich is quite accessible by public transport as well. Having said that, we do have about 40% of our teaching takes place remotely, so online teaching, which just helps to take the pressure off from those trainees who are travelling a long way to come to teaching days. We teach 7 units throughout the year, and in terms of teaching, so it's a real mixture of sort of lectures and theory, but also a lot of workshops and a lot of skills practice. So it's very interactive teaching, I would say. There's an expectation for people to participate kind of, you know, in conversation with us, but also there's lots of small group kind of practice throughout the year. We try really hard to kind of to create a learning community that feels sort of welcoming for our trainees, and it feels safe, like a safe place for people to be able to engage in skills practice. I've put Trainee Voice on there because we have a big emphasis on participation within the course. So we ask for a lot of feedback from trainees kind of like via different processes. And we do try really hard to kind of to listen to that feedback and to respond to it so it shapes the teaching that we're delivering. And finally, on our teaching days, so we're doing something new this year. So we have a parallel programme at the training centre that's called the Children and Young People's Wellbeing Practitioner Programme. A lot of the teaching content for the 2 programmes is quite similar. So for the first time this year from September, we're going to be merging the 2 groups, the 2 programmes together for some of the teaching content where we feel that will be like a good fit. And that means that for our trainees this year, some of the teaching will be delivered in bigger groups than normal. So we might have kind of 70 or 80 trainees in a group where when we do join the teaching up, there'll be lots of teaching as well that will just be specifically for our EMHP trainees. Next slide, please, Sophie. So some of just 3 of our key programme aims, so these really align with what Dan and Jill have already spoken about. So firstly, we're providing an introduction to the theory and practice of brief evidence-based interventions, in particular low intensity CBT and also parenting approaches. A second aim is to familiarise our trainees with the core principles of the CYP Psychological Training Service Transformation. So that's what used to be known as IAPT. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how the IAPT principles can be applied to actually direct working with children and families. And then our third aim is around the whole school approach. So to familiarise trainees with what the whole school approach is, and how to kind of offer that within schools. Next slide, please, Sophie. So again, this has been touched on, but these are some of the key interventions that we teach during the year. So we teach a lot about how to do a really good assessment and formulation, including thinking about risk. We teach behavioural activation for young people with low mood. There's a lot of teaching around worry management, how to work with young people with anxiety. We teach how to work with young people who have specific phobias. And then we teach how to deliver kind of interventions on a one-to-one basis with young people, but we also teach how to deliver that content for a group of young people. We teach about offering psychoeducation for young people, but also for staff. So that's often around how to notice signs and symptoms of mental health problems, what to do. We teach parenting interventions, so behaviour that challenges, but also parenting a young person who's anxious, and relapse prevention. Next slide, please, Sophie. So this has been touched on already, so I'm not going to speak about this, but just to say there is a big emphasis in the teaching programme around whole school approaches. So it's not just thinking about direct work with children and young people. Next slide, please. In terms of our assessment methods, so we start off with an exam that happens in December. It's a 90-minute exam with lots of multiple choice questions within it. We have 3 kind of written reports during the year. So we have an audit report, a psychoeducation report, and a group work report. So our written reports, we're not asking people to go off and do kind of complex literature reviews. Our written reports are very kind of related to the work that our trainees will be doing in service. So for instance, we'll be asking our trainees to deliver a psychoeducation workshop, and then they will write that up as a report. That's a typo on there because we have 3 videos, not 2. So we ask trainees to also submit some video recordings of themselves working with young people, and they're assessed. So one of them is an assessment video with a reflective piece, and also we have 2 intervention videos. So you'll be asked to record yourself working with 1 young person with low mood and 1 young person with anxiety. And then the video is marked, as is the reflective piece that you'll write alongside that. And then finally, there's a portfolio. So throughout the year, kind of you'll be keeping a log of your clinical work, also a log of your supervision, and you'll be asked to kind of complete some reflections, both on teaching days, but also on your clinical work. So your portfolio builds up throughout the year, and then you will submit it in August. Next slide, please, Sophie. So in terms of supports, we've got a tutor team who are, in my opinion, amazing. So there's like 6 tutors within our team. We work really hard kind of to try and offer support to help people to do well and to be successful during the year. We're really aware that kind of like we have trainees, often have trainees who have additional needs. We try and think really carefully about offering reasonable adjustments kind of when they're needed. And we have termly tutorials, but actually we offer tutorials sort of just as and when they're needed. Next slide, please. And then just finally, some important things to know. So first of all, it is a really challenging year. So there's a lot to learn and there is a lot to do. So it's worth being prepared kind of for that. It is competitive as well, so we get an awful lot of applications for these roles. So please don't be put off by that, but also please don't be too disheartened if you're not successful. It is a really competitive post to apply for. You don't have to have an undergraduate degree to apply, even though it's a postgraduate level programme. We do ask that our applicants have a minimum level 4 qualification. And if we do have candidates who don't have a degree but are successful at interview, we ask them to complete an essay before they are given kind of a finalised place on the course. And that's just a process that we've worked on with the university to help us all be reassured that kind of the trainees we offer places to will be able to manage the demands of a postgraduate level training course. You must be able to travel, we've mentioned that already, to the training centre as well as kind of within your patch where you're based. You wouldn't be eligible for a student card or for council tax reduction with us. We often get asked about this, but because we are affiliated to the university rather than part of the university, those things are not possible. And finally, last but not least, we do as a team, we really welcome diversity within our trainees across all protected characteristics. So we're thinking age, we're thinking gender, we're thinking ethnicity, and there are lots of reasons kind of like really why we welcome diversity. But I suppose one of the important reasons is that our trainees are going to be working across the Northwest region, kind of with lots of different young people who are kind of diverse within themselves. And we think it's really important that our young people have a say in selection, but also that we try to represent the young people kind of like out there in schools and colleges within the workforce. I think that's my last slide, Sophie, but thank you for listening, and I'm happy to try and take questions at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Caroline. Lovely. So if we can sort back onto the other talk, Jane and I are now going to talk through the recruitment process. So the first thing to say is that the adverts will be going live from today, and that's part of why we wanted the webinar first, is so that you really know and understand what it is that you're applying for. So there might be already things that you've listened to that you think, yep, I definitely want to apply, so you can do that from now. Competition, I think we've said this a number of times, is very stiff. We typically get a large volume of applicants, and as a result of that, we tend to have the posts open for a short period of time. So we are anticipating closing date at the end of the week, but obviously we'll keep an eye on numbers. Jane, do you want to explain a little bit more about our long listing day that's going to help us find the right candidates?
Yeah, and we put this in place because we know it is a really competitive process. I know we keep saying that, but it's really important that you bear that in mind. And get your applications in early would definitely be my advice. But once we do the initial sift of the applications against a set criteria, we'll then move people on to what we call a long listing day. So this is going to involve you being invited along to one of our bases over at Ellesmere Port, and that's Sycamore House. So obviously you'll get sent all the appropriate details on exactly how to get there and for what time. But you'll be invited with a small group of your peers who have also applied for these positions, and there will be a kind of group interview process. And that's going to involve some young people, and we're hoping to get some parent carers along. And you'll be interviewed by those people plus one or two of our practitioners, and you will be given a couple of set tasks, which again you'll be told what they are in plenty of time before that date so that you can kind of come along. Certainly one of them you'll need to do a little bit of preparation for. That's going to take place on the 24th of June. There might have been some information that goes out on the ad that says it's the 18th. I'm hoping that's been changed, but just in case you do see that, the date has been agreed as the 24th of June. So please do note that in your calendar. And as I say, you'll just be invited along for an hour slot. Do you want to say about the interview, Soph?
Yeah, sure. So just to say, on the 24th, Carolina's kindly coming for the day as well. So she'll be available if you do have any specific questions around the academic part as well. So we've got university representation on the 24th as well. So from the long listing day, we will then select the next round of interviews will be the more formal interviews, which will be with our senior practitioners and potentially Dan, who you've already met, possibly Jill, who you've already met as well, will be interviewing alongside Caroline, who you're meeting today. So they will be taking place on the 30th and 1st of July. I'm sorry, but we cannot accommodate any other dates. So I'm afraid if you can't make those interview dates, that's afraid that there's not a lot that we can do about that. Obviously, you won't need to be available for both days. It's literally one day that you'll be invited for interview. And again, that interview date is that time will be around an hour. And for that, we will be interviewing in Catherine House in Crewe. So from the interview date, we will then hopefully contact the successful candidates. We have 8 posts available, 4 for West Cheshire and 4 for East Cheshire. So we will allocate people according to hopefully where you would like to be placed. We will then move to that recruiting process. We need you to start by the 1st of September. So hopefully, if you're in current employment, that will give you enough time to give notice to be able to start with us in September. So the first week of September, you will start with our CWP corporate induction, and then you will start later in the month with the university. And Caroline's already said there are a number of days where you're more in university than with us for that first couple of weeks in September.
Can I just add to that, Sophie, just for
Please
anyone
do.
that is going to apply for the East Cheshire positions, the induction takes place over a 2-week period, and there will be an expectation that you attend some of that over at Sycamore House, which, as I've already mentioned, is at Ellesmere Port. So again, you just need to make sure that you've considered that and that kind of making that travel is going to be doable for you.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully we have met our aims and objectives in telling you what all of these posts are for, how to apply, and give you a flavour of what the working with us is going to be like. Can we move now to questions, to Q&A? And I think people have used the chat and the Q&A function. How's the best way to do this, Sophie Ellis? Jill?
I can go through, I can go through the questions. I'll go through the main Q&A first, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, we have had
good.
quite a few. So I'm not sure what this person's first name is. E. Thomas is asking, can you get a job with an MHST without a driving licence?
Answer to that is yes, you can get a job with us without a driving licence, but I think it would make things quite tricky. We have had applicants and employees in the past who've used public transport, and they've made that work really well for a short period of time, but I think they've always had learning to drive in their sights. Hopefully you've understood from what we've said, you need to be able to get to Manchester, you need to be able to get across Cheshire, and once you're qualified, again, being able to go from school to school. It is doable on public transport, but it's quite hard work. So I would encourage you to get driving. Next question.
Okay, yeah, so Maisie's asking, what indicators do you use to measure your effectiveness and growth as an EMHP over time?
Shall I
Okay,
answer that one too?
that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, like that one. So we have a range of measures. Certainly for our interventions, we have what we call our interactive evaluation table. So it's very much the outcome measure matches the clinical intervention. But more broadly speaking, we have things like our audits, our whole school audits. So we measure shift around organisational change within our schools. We also do separate evaluations, so qualitative and quantitative around aspects of our work. And we also have some of our staff who get involved in one of our research offers as a trust, and we support employees to do targeted bits of research. It's called the Sort It programme. Sophie and I have been through this one, but it's an opportunity to look at your data and actually have a research question and then analyse your data to look at things like effectiveness and impact of service. So that there's a whole range of things we do.
Lovely. Just to add on that, you will be have access to really super quality supervision in a number of different ways. Direct supervision with the line manager and case manager, but also clinical skills groups where you'll be with peers. And again, that's very much a reflective process about you thinking about the progress that you're making with young people and how you might use some of those measures that Jane's talking about to kind of guide your practice. Again, there are more structured ways of sort of evaluating your practice, and again, I think Caroline touched on this in terms of the academic marking, etc. But it's a mix of structured and iterative process of how you understand your progression with a young person and that work. Okay, hopefully that's answered that question.
Next question is from Sarah. She's asking, is there a requirement to join the BPS, I assume British Psychological Society? If so, would this be funded, and is supervision funded?
So once you are a qualified EMHP, you will be able to register as a qualified EMHP, and to carry on working with us as an EMHP, you would be expected to maintain that registration as a Band 5 EMHP. So the registration comes once you're qualified, and again, once you're practicing as an EMHP, there is that expectation that you maintain that professional registration. I hope that answered that question.
Okay, next question is from Keris. Thank you for all the information, really helpful. I was wondering, when applying, will there be a section to provide our preference in terms of whether they work in the Cheshire East or Cheshire West team?
Yes, please. There's a section, there's lots of different questions where you put in all of your valuable experience and your different qualifications that you've got up to now, and then there's a free text box, which, yes, I would encourage you to say where you were. As you progress through the interview process, we will have those conversations more closely with you. And again, obviously, we'll look for best fit. We don't want people travelling unnecessarily, so we will look to fit to local teams.
Great. Next question from M. What are the hours typically for university and when in post, please?
Caroline, do you want to answer?
Yes, I can do. So they are kind of full-time posts. In terms of the university days, we start teaching at 9:30, so you need to be there by then. And we run until 4:30. We do sometimes finish early, like we finish at 4 o'clock, but the expectation is that you need to be there from 9:30 till 4:30.
Lovely. And from the in-service bit, our typical hours are 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. There are occasions where you might work a little bit later. We quite often run training for our teaching staff, and that quite often is held sort of late afternoon, early evening, just because that fits in with school staff. Yeah, So 9 to 5 is typical.
Okay, Emma is asking, I'm a band 6 mental health nurse. Would there be any scope to meet this same pay band if I was successful?
I'm afraid probably not, but you might be interested. I think your name was Emma. We have band 6 posts also going out. So with this funding, we're not only employing the trainee educational mental health practitioners, but we are also looking for band 6 posts, mental health practitioner posts within our teams, and those staff are slightly more senior and are able to supervise and work with the team, within the team. Again, we are, obviously we'd love people with previous experience, but if there isn't any, again, that to be able to demonstrate that, I suppose, passion to work in the team, and there will be a certain degree of learning on the job for our band 6s as well. So I'm afraid not for the applying for an educational mental health practitioner, but if you applied for a band 6 post, might be an alternative for you.
Great. We've got 2 questions that are quite similar around graduate visas, and whether they'll be accommodated and sponsored on the programme.
I think the short answer to that is yes. I think our trust policies around this are very inclusive, and we would encourage applicants for anybody, and would then support successful applicants.
Great. Thank you. So Sarah's asking, what advice would you give to someone preparing an application who has transferable experience but not specific psychology qualifications? So they have experience through teaching, working closely with children and families.
First of all, please apply. That you sound exactly what we're looking for. Rather than my voice, I'm going to see if anybody else wants to answer that question. Dan or Jill, do you want to, or Jazz? Anybody want to answer that one?
I don't mind taking. Yeah, should we joint it? Should we joint do it, Jill?
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, from the school side of it, I think the one thing to really bear in mind is that we are an education-based mental health service. So, someone coming from the background of teaching is a real important skill, because ultimately, what you then have is a knowledge of schools. We also know that a lot of young people's mental health can manifest from their experiences in schools, and we then support the schools to be able to, things like reasonable adjustments or guidance and advice. So certainly having a teaching background is a real benefit. What I'd also say in terms of the clinical side of it, don't worry, that's what uni's for. Ultimately, you'll learn that. I mean, Jill, do you want to expand on that? Or
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think we really value experience that people have had in educational settings, the ability to be able to communicate with children at different ages, to communicate with parents and families, because we do a lot of that as well, and also to deliver things to groups as well as on a one-to-one basis is, yeah, really, really valuable. And I think, Dan, you're right, it's kind of because what you're doing is brief, low intensity interventions, all of your kind of knowledge can be gained through the university programme.
Thank you both.
Okay. Next question. Sorry, just let me find it. Rocky is asking, I'm a medical graduate, currently working within a secondary school and university settings. I'd be interested to know what qualities help trainees transition successfully into the schools-based MHST environment.
What qualities? Again, please other people jump in. I would have thought, again, that passion for wanting to do the work of an educational mental health practitioner. I think flexibility. Again, all of the 6 C's that I talked about earlier, again, that courage and commitment, and it was communication I was specifically thinking about. Does anybody else have any thoughts that they would add on that one?
I was thinking about communication. Oh, sorry, Jane.
Go on.
Do you want me to carry?
Yeah, you go first.
I think one of the things that is super important is communication, and you are communicating either with really young primary age children, secondary age children, or families and parents, or then you'd in schools communicating with the senior leadership team or the Senko or the ELSA or the teaching staff. And so you've got to be able to adapt your communication to communicate effectively with all of those different audiences.
And my addition to that would just be that I think you've got to have a passion for prevention work as well. This very much sits kind of in the area and arena of early intervention through our therapeutic input, but there's a very big part of it which is about our preventive work. That how do we create an organisation, a school that is going to be mentally health promoting for that whole school community. So that's a really important passion, I think, for the role as well.
Yeah, last one I'd add in organisation skills. I think you have to be spot on time management and have real ability to juggle priorities as well. Next question, Sophie, have we got time here?
Georgina would like to know if it's a level 7 qualification.
Yes, it is. Quick answer.
Okay, great. Ayodele would like to know, so they're currently a children and young people's worker and there are struggles around being a person of colour when dealing with young people. What supports are on ground to help manage situations where some young people and families refuse to engage?
Okay, so I think Caroline mentioned this, you know, we would like our service and our teams to be as inclusive and as representative of our communities as possible, and would really welcome applications from everybody. In terms of support from our organisation, you will be well supported, and I think there would be a commitment to challenge some of that. I think in terms of thinking about families' choice, you know, that's a balancing act between choice and actually who's the best person to see you. So I think if the best person, what am I trying to say? I think if we had a staff, you know, a staff member, I suppose we've had it with a number of things. With you would want to be seen by the best person able to do that job and to work with a young person, but obviously it's you know, again, that communication between best fit and you know, a degree of choice. I hope I've answered that question, but please do come back to me if you feel I haven't. I'm very happy to have another conversation if that's helpful. Next.
Okay. Yeah, just to let you know, Sophie, we've got 10 more questions that we haven't covered yet, so you're happy to continue?
Yeah, if people are happy to stay on,
yeah,
is everybody happy to stay on? Yeah.
So Sarah's asking, what do successful candidates demonstrate at interview?
Jill, done. Want to come in there?
I think I think when you're applying, you need to be looking at what the person's specification and the job description says, and be giving us information that tells us that you know, how you meet those criteria. But I think when we get to see you in person, we're looking for those great skills of being able to communicate with those different groups of people that I talked about before, being able to demonstrate and show empathy and understanding. I guess those 6 C's, you know, of courage and communication and care, so that we can see how well you will be able to deliver, I guess, our service to children and young people. I hope that is helpful, but I guess it's when we see you in person, then really we're looking for those kinds of skills and hoping to find somebody or some people that will fit neatly into our service and our teams.
My top tip would be answer the question and be yourself. You know, rather than trying to second guess what you think we want to hear, is be yourself and answer the question. I think would be my top tip. Next question, Sophie.
Yes, Keris would like to know, as it's a paid trainee programme, is there a set number of years you have to be in this role before progressing?
No, the first year is a band 4, and then you would move to a band 5 after qualifying. So there's an automatic progression up to the band 5. Progression up to band 6 or 7 posts would need to be, you'd need to reapply. You'd need to apply for a job. Basically, it's not an automatically move up the pay scale. So you're basically training to be a band 5 EMHP. So you start at a band 4 and move up to a band 5.
Great, thank you. So Blessing has 2 questions, but I think the second one we've already covered around visa sponsorship. So is there any age limit to apply for this job?
No.
Great. Maisie is asking, she's just saying this. All really great to hear. Thank you. John, could you please tell me more about the career progression opportunities for an EMHP?
Yes. So we've already talked about you would qualify as a band 5, and you would do several years. I would expect you to do several years consolidating that experience as a band 5. The next step up is as a senior EMHP or senior wellbeing practitioner, which again is a further year's course. No, it's not. It's 2 years course with different elements of supervision, learning how to undertake supervision of others, but also developing the clinical practice to be more of that sort of enhanced, moving towards the high intensity type CBT. So again, more skills clinically. So that's the more sort of formal route. Internally within our own organisation, we provide a lot of continual professional development for our staff. We routinely buy in and encourage development in a number of different areas. So I'm going to pick a few at random. So on the EMHP course, you will be taught a number of parent-led interventions. Those that aren't taught on the course and we feel are effective and we want to offer to our schools, we have provided in-house. We also have a clinical coordinator who's particularly experienced in parenting. So again, that might be a way that you develop into a speciality around, say, parent-led interventions. Other areas people have developed specialisms in have been around neurodiversity and making adaptations to those evidence-based interventions that you learn at university. Again, people have diversified and become expertise on a particular age range. So again, I'm thinking of a practitioner who is very skilled with the higher end age, so sort of 16, 17-year-olds, whereas I can think of other practitioners who are really skilled with that more primary school age. So there's lots of diversity to be able to find your niche and develop expertise. And as a service, that's something that we would want to encourage and support. And as I said, we do this either through that more formal senior course or that in-house CPD courses. Jane, do you want to say anything more about that? We've also had staff go into research. I'm trying to think of other things that we've had.
We've just actually recruited 2. We've created a specialist function for whole school approach work. So we will, we are a new service still. We're relatively new and we're developing. And alongside that, we look at where people have got very specific interests and look at the opportunities to develop them further within those roles.
Okay, hopefully that's answered that.
Great. So Emma has 2 questions. The first one, I think we've already touched on this. So I have experience working in primary schools as a teacher before going into mental health. Will this count in my favour?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. And then second question, I already work as a band 4 at the top of the pay scale with CWP on the adult side. Is there scope to honour your current pay level?
There could well be, yes. I think if you're already a band 4, I think within the NHS, there's an agreement around like for like matching. So yes.
Great. Andrew's asking, will it be advertised on Track Jobs? Which it will.
Yeah.
Yes, NHS jobs. Yep, today.
Yeah, great. Varney is asking, what have you found most rewarding and most challenging about working as an EMHP?
Well, I'll take this one.
Perfect.
Most challenging, I'll go with first because there's not many most challenging. I think one of my biggest ones is trying to find the right person at school to get in touch with. But after 8 months, I've finally got there, so it's not been too challenging. The other one, I came from a psychology background, so going into schools, it was sort of my own anxieties about speaking to a hall full of children. But again, it all comes with practice, and you don't do things on your own in the first year anyway. You tend to be shadowing a band 5 or a band 6 for most things, so you feel a lot more at ease with things like that. Most rewarding, I'd say, seeing the differences that you make with either young people or parents, just from beginning to end of either interventions or the whole school approach work that you do quite closely with the schools as well. That's definitely been quite rewarding when I've done things with a lot of my primary school children, especially. Yeah, I hope that's answered that question.
Thanks, Jess.
Blessing, who asked the question around the visa sponsorship, just said, sorry, I didn't get that. Does this support visa sponsorship? And I think the answer to that was it potentially would. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. And then let's go back to the Q&A because I think we've had a couple more in there. Does this fall under benefits?
Not sure I understand the question.
No. Yeah, if you want to rephrase your question and just explain a little bit more about what you're asking. And then Julie is asking, hi, are you permanent staff once completed training?
That's the plan. Yes.
Yeah, great. Natalie's asking, did you say uni days in North Manchester? That was a yes, wasn't it? It was
Yeah, that's right. Prestwich and Whitefield.
Great. Says, sorry if this is a silly question, which I'm sure it's not. I work as a nurse associate in CAMS currently. Would this support my application?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
I think we do really welcome people from education settings, but we also welcome people with other experience working with children and young people. So we've had trainees who have come from a youth work background, who have been healthcare assistants, lots of different kind of like backgrounds as well. So yeah, absolutely, CAMS experience is good.
Great. I can't see any more questions. If I've missed anyone's question, if you want to just repost it in the main chat. But I think that is all of the questions covered now.
Lovely. Okay. Well, we close the session and say thank you very much for attending today. Good luck with your application and thank you to colleagues who presented with me today. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye.